Jeff Bezos and Amazon destroyed Seattle, where I grew up. That he convinced the city of Seattle and the state of Washington to give him full tax breaks to basically bulldoze all of Seattle. Capitol Hill, Belltown, Pioneer Square, downtown. Almost all of it was torn down to build Amazon offices and poorly constructed apartment buildings for their workers who have an average stay of 36 months before they get transferred elsewhere. So already there's a problem. During COVID, they figured out they could make just as much money having remote work as the norm. So all these office buildings became vacant. Landlords wouldn't stop building these apartment buildings. The cost of living has remained the same, and the rent costs since pre-pandemic times. The real estate blocks won't budge, and Amazon is almost pulled out of the city entirely. So what we have now is the highest homelessness rate in history, yet almost every Amazon apartment building and office is totally vacant, almost abandoned for sale on the market. Nobody wants to buy. And then you have people turning around now and saying, look at this democratic leadership. Look at the filth they're allowing in the streets. When these people can't even afford, there's no SROs. They can't even afford to live anywhere. And then all the businesses are shut down. There's no commerce. It's a ghost town in downtown Seattle. And then those same people that film stuff in downtown Seattle, right? And, oh, look at this homeless guy setting a fire. Look at this liberal progressive policy. Those are the people who feed Elon Musk, who is a tech oligarch, the information that he uses to push conservative votes.
Now, my understanding with that, with Amazon, is that they bring so much money and tax into an area that they have the sway to be able to negotiate that down just because the volumes are so big.
But they can pull out whenever they want. And that's what they did with Seattle and San Francisco. That's why San Francisco.
So why did they pull out of Seattle and San Francisco?
Because they figured out they could make so much more money not having to maintain these office buildings, and they can have remote work and Zoom be the norm. Because during COVID, when they shut the offices down, they realized that productivity and economic yield and output was the same without having to pay the overhead of having HR and having these people maintain these office buildings. So they realized we don't need to move all of our employees to Seattle. We can just have them stay where they're from.
So did that cause people to go homeless, though?
No, basically what I'm saying is they tore down all the affordable housing units to build these expensive new apartment buildings to accommodate the income levels of the Amazon workers. And the landlords, after Bezos pulled out, wouldn't budge because they had to pay back the contracting costs of building these spots. So now you have, in San Francisco, they have built tech skyscrapers that are 36 floors, 3 floors are open. They have built apartment buildings they expected to fill with Amazon employees in San Francisco and Seattle, where now nobody lives because they figured out who the hell would live there by choice.
Well, here's the thing. Then eventually it falls back on the bank or the lender or whoever invested in this. Because I'll tell you, like as a real estate person, if your overhead cost is, let's just say on a building like that, $1 million a month, you can't afford to rent it out for less than your overhead cost. So they're probably just keeping it vacant. Hopefully, that eventually they'll rent it out at that price. But if they don't, then they either need to sell, take a loss, investors take a hit, the banks take a hit. I think that's coming, right?
Yeah, but before they took a hit, I mean, the people of Seattle took a hit. Like we lost all of our big coffee shops that had been there for decades. All these cultural staples, the factors that actually made it attractive, the cultural capital, the cultural appeal, that's gone, and we can't even afford to live there. Almost everybody that I graduated with, 18, 19, could not afford to live in the city of Seattle after graduation from high school. They had to live with their parents. They had to go to the shitty south suburbs, and it's yet to repopulate. And so it's unfortunate because that's the real that's the real situation on the ground in cities like San Francisco that are becoming like Detroit 2.0s because of the tech pullout. And we don't see it now, but you're going to see it in 20 years. You're going to have these empty skyscrapers, and you already see like a lords and peasant style class structure in these cities. And it's because of tech.
It seems to me, I would say tech and the internet has certainly perpetuated that, but also that people are realizing they don't need to live in large cities anymore. And a lot of people are relocating or working remotely.
Yeah.
And so you are seeing like, hey, the people that could afford to live in those areas have a lot of money, and the people that don't are moving elsewhere.
I don't blame the tech workers. A lot of people want to take it out on the tech bros and shit. That's bullshit. I mean, dude, a lot of tech is a valuable service. There's a lot of great people who work in the technology industry. And if they can choose between taking their fat Amazon paycheck and moving to Texas and Idaho or Montana and getting a beautiful like farm versus living in an apartment in San Francisco or Seattle where they're already being faced with hostility for being like an outsider, you know what they're going to pick, you know? But the problem is that, it's like a self-eating snake when you invest so much in something and you pull out, and all of a sudden you have these same tech billionaires blaming the progressive policymakers for allowing the decay. It's crazy.
So how do you think this is going to play out, like over the next 10 years?
I think that you said it the best way. I think there's going to be a suburban and rural revival among the people in our generation. I think there's less people than ever who want to live in these inner cities. They're overpriced. The homeless situation is out of control. They're not safe. People want to live more pastoral lives. It's the opposite of what's happening in Mexico, where you have everybody moving from the rural centers to the cities. I mean, even people now, like, it's kind of crazy. I have inner city friends that I grew up with my whole life who are talking about farms and learning how to, homestead and shit. That's the future that people want, because who wants to pay, even if you're even in this area like Venice? It's so expensive. And for what? The city doesn't do anything with the taxes.
Yeah, there's something romantic about the idea that you could be completely self-sustained and be off the grid.